Let's go to George, who's in North Dakota. What's going on, George? Good morning.
Good morning, Mike. Well, I've got a lot to talk about, especially on the abortion issue.
That's why we're here. Let's do it. What do you got?
Okay, well, I'm going to need some advice from you and from your callers who call in. What do you say to the woman who is pregnant with a fetus that is determined to be non-viable? This woman her fetus is deceased inside her body, and she can't get an abortion. This fetus is now dangerous to her health and her well-being, as well as having future children. What can we tell her that's going to make her say, oh, well, this is okay?
Okay. All right, a couple things. So first of all, I don't think you're actually curious, but I'll play along anyway. Your emphasis on the word fetus is duly noted. But you just changed the terms in the middle of your sentence. You started off saying a non-viable fetus, and then you changed it to deceased fetus. So which is it?
It's both. It's non-viable and eventually dies in the womb.
Well, you eventually die too. So you got to I have an answer to both of those, but I just need to know which one you're talking about so we can discuss it.
Okay,
Are you talking about
the one that's deceased in the womb?
Okay, well that's just a stillbirth, and the baby's already dead. So that's nothing to do with it. That's not an abortion if the baby's already deceased.
But she can't have it removed because it's against the law.
Yeah, I understand that. That's what that was that ad that we played a second ago that Biden put out. It's on the top of his Twitter right now. That doesn't. Actually, no, that's a little different even than that story. Yeah, I don't know what you're talking about. In what case would a already deceased baby
There's
in the
a
womb
woman
not be
in
allowed
Tennessee.
to be?
Her first name is Allie. I cannot remember her last name, but she is running for public office. She has gone through that. There's also that woman, Ann Cox, I think is her name, in Ohio, who had to go out of state in order to get this abortion, in order to remove this fetus to do a DNC because it couldn't be done because it was against the law. So,
are you talking about Kate Cox? Kate Cox,
yeah,
I think.
Kate
Yeah.
Cox,
So Kate Cox. So again, these are different things. This is really important. This is fascinating. There's Kate Cox's was a non-viable baby. So I don't know about this Tennessee story. I'm going to let this one up. But I think I'll come on the position right now that if a deceased baby is in a mother's womb, it should be allowed to be removed. I'll take the hard stance, I think, on that one. But let's focus on the non-viable. but that's interesting that those two things I believe are being intentionally conflated when they're obviously different. But the non-viable, I guess the thing is, first point would be says who. Let's go to Stephen, who's in South Carolina. Stephen, how are you?
Hi, Mike. Thanks for taking my call.
Well, thanks for calling. What's your story?
Well, my wife and I had a pregnancy at about 15, 16 weeks. Was determined through amniocentesis that it was had Edwards syndrome, which is trisomy 18. Like Down syndrome is trisomy 21. And so viability went both ways because there was a heartbeat. The baby was alive. Best case scenario, wouldn't live past the age of 7. Severely retarded. But, some doctors said it wasn't viable because it won't live a productive life, so to speak. But its heart was beating, so it was certainly viable, depending on who you ask. And my wife and I decided to keep her, and my wife carried her all the way up till due date, and she died in utero. So there wasn't a heartbeat before she had been born. And so they scheduled an appointment to go to the hospital, induce 2 days later, and she was born naturally, but not alive.
Stephen, take me into that hospital room. What were you and your wife feeling? What were you doing? What were you thinking during that?
Well, it was hard at the time because the baby had already passed. There wasn't any heartbeat. She'd only made it up to about 6 pounds, even carrying full term, and it was.
All right. Stephen, I got to stop you there. I got to stop you there. Stephen, 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 I got to stop you there. St
there was a certain mood. I mean, we wanted her because we believe in life, and we're willing to accept the challenges of everything. But there's a certain respect. It was God's will that she not live, and He obviously knew best for us. Maybe spared us any heartache and anguish that we would have had to go through. But ironically, the OB that my wife had, there's a group of like 4 of them, and the one that was on call that day that dealt with us was the one that was kind of short. My wife didn't really care for her as much as the other ones, and she was the one that was there at the time. Come to find out, she was a believer. She was kind. She kept track of us, and she really helped to smooth the whole thing over. But you've got to be induced, and that was painful for my wife, and go through the whole process of childbirth,
Yes.
and get all the bills from an entire pregnancy and a birth, and not have a baby to take home. So. But the hospital themselves, I think primarily because of the doctor, it was a best case scenario for us. It just felt like we were in God's care and in His hands.
To go through the pains of labor and not have a baby at the end of it, and to be sitting in the labor and delivery floor, and to maybe hear the cries of a baby next door. I can't fathom that whole experience for you, and I'm so sorry that happened.
Thank you.
And I don't want to take this into the political, but that's the moment right now. What is, because I can't speak to this. What's your advice? So the families that the Biden administration are showing everyone, right, with their sad commercials, who are in situations just like yours, what would you say to those people if you had a one-on-one conversation with them?
Well, a heartbeat is life, and I don't see. There's other things in our lives, not just pregnancies or complications. I mean, there's some that have gone, perfectly healthy baby all the way up to birth, and something odd had happened, and it's got to be devastating, at that point. But we follow the leading of God's hand, and it really wasn't a choice for us. We just anticipated that, this is what was going to happen. This would have been our second born. We had a 2-year-old, and this is how it happened. I think that there's a bit of smoke and mirrors right now as far as the Democratic Party, because they're talking about taking away abortion rights, and whether I agree or not, whether it should be a right. What Roe v. Wade, all it did was take the federal government out of it and turn it back to the states. So they're pitching this thing as that the Supreme Court's trying to take abortion away, and that wasn't the case. They were just turning it back over to the states. And some states, I'm down in South Carolina, this is the Bible Belt. You're going to expect to have more stringent, or some would say they shouldn't have the right to stop the life of an unborn child. That's the belief down here. Whereas, in New York, they'll go to term and do a what is partial birth abortion, and then take the organs and sell them. So it just depends on where you are in the country and your culture and beliefs that somewhere between black and white, everybody falls.
Yeah, Stephen, I appreciate the call. Give my best to your wife. Thanks for sharing your story, Stephen. Please, I hope you can share it with many others as well. It needs to be shared. People need to hear that. So I'm overwhelmed. Just to bring it back to political, that's not good enough. What you just described to me, like just as a man, that's not good enough. That South Carolina it's this, but New York we'll just kill him, whatever. Like I'm just like nah. So I'm torn between thinking that Trump's political calculus is right, and hating that it's right. Ashley in Georgia. Good morning, Ashley.
Good morning, Mike.
What's your story?
So long story short, when I became pregnant, I was pregnant with twins. And on my first ultrasound, when they do the measurements, I was told that baby A, because of the nuchal fold measure, it was going to have a high likelihood of Down syndrome. Then they told me that they were identical twins. And then that hit me, well, if one's down, the other one's Down syndrome, if they're identical. So I went home and I marinated on this. And then after the whole pregnancy of tests, I was told Down syndrome. I was told cystic fibrosis likelihood. Then I had twin-to-twin transfusion syndrome, which basically put me on bed rest at 19 weeks. I delivered at 24. They were just 1.3 pounds and 1.6 pounds, both of them. They survived. On the day one, the doctors were like, they're really small, they're alive. They're going to have, and they listed a laundry list of every medical problem, everything you could think of. And they said, we can withdraw care, and I said, they're alive. You've got the equipment to keep them alive. I'll cross that bridge when I get there, if I get there. 6 months passes. They're both in the NICU. They both survived the NICU, 24 weekers. And I brought them home. They both have autism. They're both nonverbal, but that's it. They're 12. I mean, it's a challenge, but I was told it was going to be just horrible and told multiple times, withdraw care. And I can't even imagine.
This is such an incredible story, Ashley, because usually this story ends in, we told we should get an abortion, we decided not to, and now they're totally fine, everything's great. But your story ends with, and they're actually autistic and nonverbal, and you still think you made the right choice.
Absolutely. And even after this, I said, if I were to get pregnant again, I would sign something that said, I do not want to test. I don't want to know anything. They ruined the whole process. I mean, it was the worst experience ever.
Yes.
Just because of the what if that could happen, that never happened.
Yes.
I was told blind, deaf, half their body, wheelchairs, this and that. I mean, we're autistic, we're nonverbal. It's not easy. Trust me, 2 of them. But I have it so much better than so many others, and God gave them to me. He knew I could handle it. That's the only thing I could think of.
Wow. Come on with that perspective. How long did it take you to come to that conclusion?
Honestly, I just take things and just run with it. Maybe a week or I don't know. It doesn't take me long to just take it in and just go with it. Why sit and sulk?
That's amazing. Ashley, what a joy to hear from you today. Thank you for sharing.
No problem.